My name is Murali Mandayam. I'm the Director of Consulting Services for the Qt company. So today we're going to talk about how to select a Qt partner. I think some of you probably saw a mini session this morning with Peter, Kala, and myself and the keynote. So we kind of gave you a little brief about the partners we have, and now here we added a couple of more partners, and then we're going to talk a little more in detail. So when this topic was given to me, like how to select a Qt partner, it is one of the tough ones because it's like picking who is the best among your children, right? Like, so, you know, who's your favorite child? Like, you know, so it's kind of tough because, you know, I mean, Qt company also offers consulting services and along with the partners, so it is really a difficult one. But here we are, nevertheless. So anyway, I'll introduce the partners here. So I have Mark Hatch sitting next to me. He is the President and Chief Operating Officer of ICS. ICS has been, in the business for quite a good time. You know, I've been working with Mark for almost like 6-7 years now, or maybe even longer. So ICS specializes in application development. They have a really good user experience team. So yeah, and they also, their main focus has been on the user experience design and the application development for Qt and QML. But they've also done some system integration at the hardware level, and they've also done projects like MFC to Qt conversion. Right? Is that right, Mark? Yeah. Okay. So yeah, let me ask you, Mark. In your projects that you've done, is it always better to start with the user experience design, or with the storyboard, or like what is your experience, and what do you guys think is the best way to approach to the project? So
Thank you, Murali. Is this on? Got it. So ICS, we have a saying which is you start off with user experience first, and it's because you kind of have to have that really drives the architecture and what you end up doing. But it's not user experience where it's kind of you start off with a pipeline and then it stops and then you do development. One of the things that we've noticed is that if you do that type of development, you end up with the result that the user experience guys can run wild, right? I mean, they can imagine things that aren't always implementable or aren't always implementable within your budget. So one of the things you start off with is user experience, because that's what kind of governs what the things will look and feel like. But someplace during that period, you need to have the architecture, you need to have the engineering team starting to ramp up at the same time. Part of it's because you're understanding the user requirements as you're defining the user experience, but you also need the combination of the dreams and the concepts of the user experience designers along with the reality and the pragmatism of the architecture people. So it starts there, and then from there it kind of ramps. The user experience people taper off as you get under development, but they never completely go away, because at some point you've got to have them back to do usability testing and make sure that the application at the end really works the way you want it to.
So what would you say is the mix between a UX and a UI project in your portfolio?
Yeah, well, there's two questions. On a typical project, what the mix is between user experience in terms of time and expense and development, and then kind of where we are today. So one of the things that we've noticed over the last year is that the growth of user experiences in terms of percentage of our project. So we have now, I think my UX team has like 12 people working for us. They're artists, and we're an engineering company. It's like we have artists working for us, and so that's grown from basically zero over the last 3 or 4 years to 20-30%. The other question, which I think you were trying to get at, is when we see a project, and I'm talking a non-trivial project, what's the split in terms of budgets between UX and development? And one of the things that's surprising me is I'm almost seeing 50-50, 40-60. I'm seeing a much heavier user. For me, I've come out of the engineering area. I think engineering. I'm like, these are artists. What's I'm unfortunately not giving them their fair due. But when we actually get down, we cost it out, and we're doing usability testing. More than just designing wireframes, you're actually going out and interviewing customers of the product.
Yep.
You're seeing 50-50.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. By the way, I forgot to add that Mark, ICS is based out of Boston, but they have consultants all over US. They primarily cater to the North American market like Canada, US, primarily. Okay. So next I have Kala Dalhammer. I hope I pronounce your name correctly.
Almost.
Almost, all right. It's like a return compliment, like when you pronounce my name, I guess. Okay. All right. So Kala is the CEO of a company called KDAB. We call it KDAB in short. They're headquartered in Sweden, but they have a lot of consultants based out of Europe. And even though there are consultants in Europe, they have a big market share in the US. They have a lot of customers in the US. I think pretty significant, I would say, right? So again, Kala's and KDAB are actually also have developed a lot of Qt QML applications. They've also contributed to the Qt project. The Qt 3D is one of their contributions. And of course, they have helped a lot of customers move from legacy code, the Qt 4 to Qt 5 and things like that. So given that, Kala, what your product contribution expertise and your tenure as a Qt partner, what are some of the common mistakes that you see when a customer moves from a legacy architecture to Qt?
Yeah, there are actually a couple of things that can go wrong in a migration project. But what I would think is the biggest danger is trying to turn too many knobs at the same time. So let's say a customer has this huge code base of, let's just say, motive code, for example. Say 4 million lines of code, not an unusual project for us. And they come to us and say, okay, so motive is dead. This looks 1980s, and we can't find any developers anymore to maintain this. So now we've heard about this Qt thing, and this sounds good, and you sound like the right guys to go to. So can you bring this to Qt for us? Oh, and by the way, we also like these new features, and it needs to look more modern. And then we usually tell them, we'll be very happy to do all of that for you, but please can we do one thing at a time in order to take risk out of the project? So we would usually advise to first do the technology switch, moving to Qt, and then modernize the UI, and then add features, or maybe the last two could also be turned around. Otherwise, what you're trying to do is you're trying to perform surgery on two vital organs at the same time, and no doctor would ever do that. And so that's something that we would not advise. Another typical danger, maybe not mistake because it's unavoidable, but danger is that there tend to be, so these old software code bases, they tend to have so many dependencies that our customers often don't even know about anymore because the last guy who knew the code left the company 3 years ago. So there could be external libraries that can't be replaced anymore because they don't exist anymore. Their vendor has gone out of business long ago. They didn't have the source code for that, so that can't be migrated along with it. So we need to find alternative replacements, or they have, even worse, they have device drivers for some ancient operating system using some ancient bus for which you can't even find a proper screwdriver anymore for the fixtures. This is also one of the major project risks in migration, figuring out what the external dependencies are and then considering what you do about every single one of them.
Okay, thank you. So we move on to Alex Diebold. He's the managing director for a company called Pelagicor. They recently acquired by Luxoft, which is another big engineering service provider. And Alex is based out of Munich in Germany. They have very specific vertical that they cater to in the automotive sector. He's been my ex-colleague from the Nokia days. So welcome, Alex. So Alex, given your automotive focus, why why is the digital user experience the key to the car manufacturers to kind of, to win the disruption in the automotive industry? What do you think? I mean, why is the user experience the key?
Yeah, thanks, Murali. Well, the UX is really key to differentiate against what's happening in the marketplace. There is a lot of pressure from the consumer electronics companies, and specifically, of course, from Apple and Google coming in and competing with the car manufacturers. If you look at Apple CarPlay or MirrorLink or things like that, so those guys are pushing in. And especially the premium OEMs, the premium car manufacturers, they are pushing back. And they want to take over more and more control of the user experience. You have to look at the industry holistically, and how it looks today is that a lot of specifications from the OEMs actually go by paper to the tier 1, and then you get something back, but never really the UX you expect. And that's actually where we come in, and where we come in with Qt and QML, which is a fantastic way to bridge the gap between designers and developers and actually bring design, bring stunning UX to the road. And I think that's the first part. So we are mostly working with car manufacturers and suppliers to bridge that gap. And then the second step is to look at the entire software stack on an ECU holistically from silicon to pixel. So we're working with silicon vendors. We are very active in the Geneva Alliance, and we use Qt Automotive, and QML to have the entire software stack for the car of the future. So that's our approach, very holistic, from silicon to pixel, from concept to production.
Thank you. Last but not the least, we have Sebastian Cheo from a company called Vitekio. Vitekio is also, they started off their roots in Europe, but they have offices in US and APAC also. They're specializing in full stack system integration, right from the board level integration. They've done application development also. So if you stop by at their booth, there's a little coffee machine that they have demoing, which they have done. So
much
welcome.
appreciated. Thank you.
Yeah, you can get some real good coffee, like, So Sebastian, welcome. And what do you, given your focus on IoT, which is kind of a horizontal market as opposed to the automotive vertical, so what kind of pitfalls or success stories have you seen with your customers? If you could elaborate a little bit.
Yeah. So we're coming from the embedded market. So this is where we come from. But we are now still in the embedded market, but as well in the IoT market, because there's a lot of customers that don't know how to deal with such projects and that are starting to work with this. For instance, we work with L'Oréal, the French luxury brand, and we help them to design devices, the software part of it. And so this is a huge market that we want to address alongside with the embedded market. So what do we see with this kind of project? Sorry, the pitfall are that they want to start to do this themselves, but without thinking too much about the architecture, the technology choices, etc. So the problem is when they start too fast the project because they are excited and they make bad choice about technologies and architecture. So that's a problem, because then they can come to us and say, oh, you're supposed to be an expert, probably you can help us. But yes, we can, but we cannot provide the whole promise, which is like a faster time to market and a more sustainable device, etc. So this is the pitfall of one project. And but when you can collaborate in an agile mode with the team of the company, then you can design the architecture, you can choose the best technologies that would fit the project. It's not that one technology is better than the other one, it's just that one will fit better for one project. Then it goes all the way, and it's very simple, even if sometimes we have some problems as well, but it goes all the way. So I would say the highest point of a project is when you have time to define technologies and architecture, and the pitfall is when you go too fast into the project.
Thank you, Sebastian. So on that note, I'll leave it to the audience if you guys have any questions. Anybody wants to ask any questions?
Hello. For Mr. ICS, sorry, I forgot your name. Uh, Martin? Mark. Okay, hi, Mark. So I came from a company that recently had to move from a Q widget application to more of a Q quick to have more modern UI and everything. And we had to deal for the first time with a UX designer. And we find it like really hard, like us, we're all engineers, to discuss with the people, to understand, try to. The person was a consultant, so she was not aware of anything that we were doing. And do you have any like tips or hints on how to create, if we are driving the development, how do we talk to these people to pass the information and be sure that we get what we want?
That's really a difficult thing. For larger companies, and I guess the Logicor has done that too. We actually have training materials where we take and train designers in some level of QML, so that improves the communication between the two. We find that, I mean, part of the problem is the communication mechanism that they provide you tends to be flat. It tends to be wireframes and things, and so that becomes really difficult, especially if you're trying to get animations and other things going on. The second part that we run into is that and that's why I was talking earlier about the architect being part of the puzzle, is that they spec things in that are just not possible. You know, I have an example of an appliance manufacturer which had a machine which used to washing machine with little bubbles that would rise up, you know, when the machine was on. And you know, the problem with that was the device didn't have a GPU, and the designer couldn't understand why it works with Flash on their on their Intel quad core machine. So it's difficult, and that's one of the reasons why we ended up developing our own UX team. And I know Kala has some people too in that area that could actually kind of bridge that gap. Now, I don't think any of us are going to claim to be on the same industrial design category as Apple, but for professional development tools and stuff like that, I think one of your best bets in this thing is to have somebody that's kind of has that uniformed capability. Now, it's not good for you; it's too late. But you know, for larger companies where they have UX teams in place, educate them like what you guys did at Mercedes. I don't know if I can say that anyway, but at one of your customers, and you educate them, and you have a consultant. I'm sorry. Call it. You might have a suggestion.
Yeah, so we also have a team of industrial designers and behavioral psychologists and artists, and I found it especially when it comes to the artists, it's very important that they don't get too artistic. And the artists and the designers, they need to have an understanding of what it actually is that what they are designing gets deployed to, what the limitations of the platform are. So if they don't have that understanding, there will expect a lot of loss in communication and having to redo things. Many of our designers actually write their own QML code. That's not code that I would ever flash onto a device. When it's kind of software quality wise, it's not good, but that means that they can actually test themselves what they're trying to do, and if they come up with some fancy holographic 3D whatnot user interface and that runs at 2 frames per second, then they will see that themselves very quickly.
Thank you.
Hello. Wonder if I could get a brief summary of the reasons to choose Qt widgets versus QML for a UI project.
Yeah, I mean there are several different reasons, and they are probably for each project you would have different considerations. One thing definitely to look at is what is the available skill set in your team. If both technologies would work deployment-wise, but you have a team that knows widgets but that doesn't know QML, then maybe you choosing widgets is not such a bad idea. It depends a little. I mean, a Qt widgets application is going to look very different from a QML application. So it depends a little bit on what visual effect you're trying to achieve, what your users are used to. It also depends a little bit on what kind of hardware you have. At this point, deploying a QML application on a device without GPU is, where it is possible with a 2D renderer, it's likely not a good idea because it's gonna perform very slowly. That's something that's obviously worth trying out with a prototype. But these are some of the considerations. One data point: if you have lots of data to display, I mean, like really large amounts of data to display, widgets probably serve you better. If it's more about the user interaction and less about the data, QML might serve you better. These are just rules of thumb.
Thank you. Do you have any comments, Alex?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Maybe just to add to that, I think from our perspective, when it comes to rich and fluid touch interfaces and interaction with the user, QML is the way to go. And that's what we are seeing in the core industry right now being adopted.
Thank you. It's a great panel. Thank you. So my question, going back to that Murali's key questions, is that when you collaborate with a company for migrating or the legacy software to the Qt, now how do you what's the process involved? Can the company also involve their own developers and engineering team so that when they want to support, they can be on their own, or we need to rely on you guys that you will support on that? That's my first question. Maybe second question is to the specific to Luxor team. Thank you. So I want to know that you mentioned that you immigrated from the Qt to the silicon. So I just want to hear that what's that theory from Qt to silicon process involved in that. Thank you.
Okay, you want to start, Alex?
Yeah, I can start with that one. Well, the approach is really from silicon to pixel, a vertical slice through the entire stack. And one example, for instance, that we showed yesterday at the Geneva event and also yesterday here at the show, is if you think of a tuner UI for a car, where you can do a skip or scan. So that's something typically you would develop in QML. And then on your development environment, you would have a simulator backend that simulates the radio. And on the actual target, you would have, for instance, for the NVIDIA Drive CX, we have been using the Dirana chipset that actually does the tuning and the output. And so this entire, from pixel to silicon, we consider very, very important to come up with a great user experience. So if you screw it up somewhere along that line, it simply doesn't work. So it's really not required that you do a full-fledged product suite that includes everything, but we think it's core that you have this vertical slice through the entire stack.
So we have a little more than 2 minutes. Maybe Mark, you can answer the other question about the legacy to Qt.
Thanks for asking the question, and I know Kala has a lot of experience here, so I won't take the full 2 minutes. It all depends on the software, the hardware, and the team and the experience. I mean, there's the old story of you go in the car mechanic and it says it's $50 an hour, but it's $60 an hour if you help, and it's $75 an hour if you want to. I'm sorry, $60 an hour if you watch, $75 an hour if you want to help. And so if you're going to use it as a training kind of mechanism, then you need to expect that there will be a time during the port where it will be training. Now, if it's devices or if it's Motif especially will tend to be more desktop things. So that opens up the door for multiple locations working simultaneously. And so I think in our local geographies, I think everybody puts people on site and where necessary to get and gather the information and create a team player. But I think you'll find that people work well in the environment that they exist. Carl, you wanna?
Yeah, that's actually something I feel very strongly about. I mean, we've gone through many different levels of engagement. But if you want the fastest, the cheapest, and the most reliable result, then you stay out of the way. To be honest, Make yourself available to answer questions from our team. Test early, test often, very agile. And then we run a training session a week or so with you afterwards to introduce you to what you've done so that you can maintain. But having two different teams meddle with the code, that's usually a recipe for problems. It's my experience.
All right. Any more questions? We're kind of pretty close to the end. And I'll have one question for Sebastian, maybe.
Yeah.
What kind of projects you would not take typically? Like, what are the projects like you wouldn't want?
A project that deals with only application, we would probably not take it because it's not our main skill set, I would say. We come from the embedded system. So what we do the best, I think, is to try to design the software architecture from the hardware part, so from the very low level to the cloud connectivity, and this is the world integration that we can provide. That is the best asset we can provide to a customer. Okay. So I would say rather a normal just application, mobile or web anyway, we wouldn't take it like alone.
Right. Thank you. So we thank the audience and thank the panelists. Really appreciate your time and the audience time. So if you have any more specific questions, unfortunately we ran out of time. We'll all be downstairs in our respective booths, so you can contact us anytime. And
if you want to have a good coffee, come to the Wittig.
Yeah.